Okay, so uh, Max again. Hi, as probably the only person uh, that's going to be seeing these ever. Um, Keeping track of my reading graphic novels around the world, trying to understand cultures from different perspectives, particularly of authors that live in those parts of the world. And this is a doozy for me. This is easy going to be. I knew this was already going to be one of my favorite reviews ever. This is up there with like my favorite cultural graphic novel of all time. It's up there. I prefer this probably even to Mouse, although I'll have to score that later. But it's up there with Mouse and Persepolis, and in my mind, all the greats. So, without further ado, uh, Shubeik, Lubeik, which ironically, my kids and I had to Google today how to pronounce this because I don't speak Arabic and I mispronounce things just in general. I was telling my kids this is Shubeik, Lubeik, which is how my crazy brain read this, but by Deena Mohamed is just incredible. So I'm going to start to go through the scores here, and I'm going to hop around a little bit. But first of all, spoiler right here. This book is just a monster. Like, it's the first book that I reviewed that almost got to 9 as an average score. And you can see a couple of these categories. I was so conflicted about how to score it between like an 8 or a 9 or an 8 and a 7. But ultimately, this is what I chose. I'm going to start with the X Factor, although that's been the last category I've started with all these reviews for the purposes of the fact that this book is hard to understand outside of the absolutely genius kind of mythology it uses to tell its story, wherein this story is a book about wishes being commercialized, which is a wonderful idea coming from centered in the country of Egypt. I should have said it earlier. This is a Egyptian type story. The author Deena is from Egypt and I think has lived in Cairo basically her whole life. And the translation of Shubeik Lubeik is "Your wish is my command" in Arabic, which we've all heard connected to the classic Aladdin tale and such. But she created this absolutely wonderful idea of basically an entire world wherein wishes are able to be put in various containers, sold. There's different classes of wishes, which I'll talk about. And then as the wishes appear, they are formed by Arabic characters, and depending on the class of the wish, they kind of have a different quality, which is really, really cool. There's entire pages sort of building the lore around wishes, which I will show here. Like, this is a whole sort of PSA through the book about wish classifications, which in the book it's basically 1, 2, and 3 are the classes you run into, where first class wishes are incredibly valuable and third class wishes can be or class 3 wishes can be very dangerous. But just such a genius concept to make a whole story where wishes are now part of an economic commercial system. It infuses everything, and they really the author really tells this story in such a convincing way that it really feels like some of the dynamics they lay out in this fictional story would be totally how it would play out in the real world. So without spoiling everything, this is just, to me, the central mechanic or idea of the book is this fantasy world based in the real world in Egypt, but this wish commoditization is genius, and all the class dynamics that emerge around it sort of fall out organically. So just one of the coolest ideas I've ever seen. I think then I would jump into probably then talking about the character score next. This book is incredibly strong with its characters. The book really centralizes on a short number of characters. We have someone named Aziza in part 1 who essentially becomes a prisoner for unjust reasons, and you follow her through her journey and learn what she cares about. Noir, who is a really interesting character, basically a privileged collegiate kid in this society, um, and also still struggling with a lot of his own issues. And then finally, Shakri, and apologies again if I'm pronouncing any of these names wrong, who owns a bodega of sorts in Egypt, in Cairo. And there's several other main characters, but I'm not going to spoil anything. But all three of them are struggling with this idea of how to resolve some things in their life, but also that interweave with the fact that Shakri, the shopkeep at the bodega, which they wouldn't call it a bodega, but I am here because I'm based on the East Coast. He's given 3 first-class wishes, which comes out very early in the story. The characters are all so complex, and some of the things in this story I won't spoil whatsoever. They're just some of the best things I've ever read as a story in general. Just like really beautiful, really really compelling characters. All of their motivations make sense. You get to like see inside their heads very deeply, and I just love them. So I think in terms of the sort of unique qualities of this graphic novel as well as the characters, it doesn't get better really in my book. It's incredible. Then I'll go through the art, the history, and the readability scores next. So for art, I struggled here. I went between an 8 and a 9. I ultimately settled on a 9 because of kind of the holistic elements of this book. As you might have noticed here, this book was originally written in Arabic, which it talks about in the book. So you sort of see right off the rip, if you start reading it, it'll tell you that you're on you'll see that it'll tell you that you're on the right side of the book and that you read this one from right to left, which is also how every page and panel goes. If you start on the wrong side, it'll tell you that too, and like to flip it around. You see also that there's like some vivid color, not on this page vivid in particular, but some of the pages have absolutely beautiful, vivid, colorful scenes. I showed this one already, but this is the very beginning of part 1. So beautiful color, and they interweave some of the artistic characters of Arabic into some of the panels, which I think is just wonderful. It reminds me a little bit of Habibi, which is another of my all-time favorites, which I'll definitely review later. But just being able to use some of the characters from the language itself, which Arabic is the primary language in Egypt, in like a beautiful way, interwoven almost as like a drawing itself in the work, I thought was wonderful. They do some really great sharp transitions as well. There can be some incredibly busy panels, a lot of stuff going on, and some of the panels can be incredibly wordy as well. But then there's other panels where it's very jarring, it's very simple. All these things add up to me like really sharp contrasts, really beautiful draw. Like it's just drawn so well, and I love how they use color when they do. They don't use color throughout it, and I think that I just couldn't give this like a 10 out of 10 kind of an art score, because I think there's after reading this several times, there's not like single images, I guess, that stick with me as like absolutely shatteringly wonderful, and like that's the only thing I'll remember. It's more like the story points that sit like that. But the art is beautiful. It's a long book. Like it's like I think over 500 pages is this book, but the art makes it seem so fun the entire time. I guess I'll skip to readability right while I'm here. I think this is an 8, partially because this is like the 3rd or 4th time I've re-rented this from the library to read. But again, it's over 500 pages. It's incredibly easy to read. There's some sharp images that you'll see again throughout it with almost no words. There's other pages where it's it's pretty dense. I think the only reason I would give the readability a slightly lower score is without ruining anything. I found one of the 3 stories just went on a little long for my tastes, and that's probably, again, the one knock against it. But overall, if I want to come back and reread something multiple times, I give it a very high readability score. Finally, on the history culture side of it, I rank it again. It's an interesting one to rank. I gave it like an 8 overall. I think that it's not a knock. I think on being fictional. I think that the beauty of this story is that it creates such a fun fictional world that you really can get into, that also feels like it reflects the culture in a really real way. Like in one of my previous reviews, I reviewed the book Helena Filipina, and one of the reviews of that book within it is that it gave you a real sense of what it would be like to like go to Manila. And I think the author achieves so much by just how they write and the art of the scenes. Like again, there's so much good stuff in here that without assuming this is actually what every part of Cairo looks like, or Egypt, there's just some like really beautiful images. Culturally, it touches on the fact that Islam plays a large part of the story, especially for the character of Shakri, who's an extremely religious guy. But there's also a character who's quite important in the story who's devout, who's a Christian, which is also the second largest religious group in Egypt. So it feels like, again, in the subtle ways, this just feels like it's written by someone that has like such a love for where they come from, and they're trying to show you what the religions look like on the ground. The beauty of the language, the houses, the food, all kinds of cultural elements, I guess, to understanding a place. And so it's not exactly I wouldn't give it the history score I would give probably Mouse going through like World War II in such detail, especially Auschwitz. But yeah, I thought it was still really strong. I love this book, which is why this is too long of a video. But Shubeik, Lubeik, which I had to again right at the top because I had been mispronouncing the title of this book for a long time after also telling a bunch of people to read Shubeik, Lubeik. But Shubeik, Lubeik, highest ranked thing I've reviewed so far. Again, up there for me for favorite of all time. Wonderful, wonderful book. I'll end it here.